On this electrifying episode, we cover high voltage software's The Conduit, the Wii's console exclusive FPS game. We dive deep into the fake instruments used for the soundtrack, and why is this guy wearing these radical sunglasses? All this and more on SEGA Talk.
SEGA Bits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to this high voltage episode of SEGA Talk. I'm your wagifying host, George, and with me is Nunchuck Barry.
I knew you'd say that.
I didn't even put that in the notes. Look at that.
Wow.
Off the top. Today we're talking about the first-person shooter for the Nintendo Wii 2009's The Conduit, which was actually developed by High Voltage Software. Part of this episode will be discussing kind of more of the developer, High Voltage Software, because they actually spend a longer time than most people think they were a studio. I feel like the most advertisement they got as a studio was under Sega and under The Conduit. And they were part of Sega's early ambition as their own Western developer. Or not really developer, but publisher. Like they wanted to find American companies and developers and kind of like publish games under them. And obviously, you know, branch out instead of just doing Japanese games. But before we get into the meat of the episode, the nitty and gritty, if you guys want to support the podcast, you could check us out on patreon.com/SegaBits. We have a variety of tiers, and one of the tiers is you get to tell us what to talk about. And like, this episode is obviously a sponsored episode because I probably would have never covered The Conduit. But somebody paid and said, cover The Conduit. And now
That's right.
I did a whole episode on The Conduit. And now I know more about the development than I ever did. And
More than you ever wanted to.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I don't hate The Conduit, but also it's not one of those episodes where I'm like, it's on my list of Sega games. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many Sega games, especially since I like the Japanese side. It's interesting to see the other side.
Right.
You want to talk about the Patreon memories in this episode?
Yeah. So Bobbert Castaneda picked this episode. So his memories are that he remembered the hype for The Conduit back in 2008, back when Sega was one of the few third-party companies who gave the Wii proper games. This one stood out to me because of the graphics being impressive for a Wii game. I bought the game at launch and enjoyed every moment of the single-player campaign on the online matches. High Voltage Software made decent use of the Wiimote and Nunchuck controller. Pointing and shooting is fun, especially when experimenting with the different weapon and shaking the Wiimote to do a melee attack on small aliens is always funny to me. The only thing I didn't like about the game is the use of ASE to solve puzzles. That seems like a waste of the player's time. Then adding variety to this FPS, especially with the ghost mines. I played this game recently, and I still like the game overall, despite not aging well in some areas. I hope this game somehow gets a port or remaster.
I don't know. You think it's ever going to happen? Because, like, we'll talk about it, but I actually have, it kind of got a re-release in 2013. And I think a lot of people skipped on it, so we'll talk about that when we get to it. But what are your thoughts and history with The Conduit, Barry? Do you remember this hype train?
I remember the game being talked about. Now, this was a few years before Sega Bits came about, so this would have been in the Sega Nerds forum days where it was mostly, you know, you, me, Ryan, Aki, some of the other guys talking about this game. But of course, I didn't have a Wii at the time, so I would just kind of look at your back and forth and just kind of move along, not really follow it. But I was aware that Sega definitely wanted to be the ones to bring more, you know, as as Bobbert says here, proper games. So of course there was Mad World, and I feel like this and House of the Dead Overkill were all kind of part of that initiative to push grittier, dirtier Japanese and American developed games to the console.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think they were in a part of this, like, I don't know, an marketing initiative, I guess you could say, where they're like, actually everyone makes crappy Wii games except for us. There was even an interview with the guys from High Voltage. I didn't add it, but they were like sitting on the couch at Sega, and they're like I'm gonna be honest, a little bit pompous, and they're like, oh, there's no developer making good Switch games. Oh, except for Sega, of course. Almost forgetting in the end that their publisher also was making a lot. You know, like they were making.
Oh, for the Wii.
Yeah. And I think Capcom also made some good games. I think. I agree. Like, we'll get into it, but we'll get into it. But I agree that there wasn't that many quality, and people are gonna get all mad. But when we get to it, I'll give you my take on it, and then we'll see if we agree. But in the beginning of development, first we got to know who High Voltage is to understand why the Conduit is the Conduit. So I would say that the Conduit is their biggest, most original IP they've ever made, and it's still one of their most well-known products as a company. But the company was actually founded way back in April 1993 with Carrie J. Gunosky. So the start of the episode, let's look at some of the games before they actually got into this publishing deal with Sega. So their first game ever as a company is a game called White Man Can't Jump on the Atari Jaguar, which is a legendary console that Barry really, really likes. Released in 1990. I know you don't like it.
I don't care about it.
I mean, I don't think we have it, but it's crazy. It's one of those consoles that, like, some people want to say it was underrated, but I'm like, I think it was rated just fine.
Right.
This game was co-developed, the first game, with Trimark Interactive, and it's based on the 1992 film, but coming out like 3 years after the film. People say that it's a lot like that Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam, or I don't know what it was, on the Sega CD. Obviously not a legendary game to start off their team name. It's a licensed game, obviously, but it has no characters from the actual movie, the Spike Lee movie. I think it's a Spike Lee movie. Did you ever want to play a White Man Can't Jump video game, and did you ever see the movie?
No, I've never wanted to play a game based on it, and I kind of remember my uncle or aunt watching the movie one time, and I was like, I heard the title of it, and I'm like, wow, that sounds like a really hateful movie. Like, I thought it was a movie about a guy who couldn't jump, and everyone was like, shh, you're white, you can't jump, you're not allowed.
I've never seen
it. Does in the end,
I've never seen it. I don't know if that's what the actual plot. It could be the plot. It could be, but right. I remember this movie always being in the rental place. I used to have a family owned rental place, and I always remember this movie there because I always thought the same thing as you. I'm like, I don't want to watch about a movie about a white guy that doesn't know how to jump. It's like, what? This is ridiculous. That's why, and I wasn't into basketball as a kid. I'm not going to be renting a basketball movie, so definitely didn't see it. Their next,
right, but it was Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson's the legendary actor.
And it was directed by Ron Shelton.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a Spike Lee film for some reason. I don't know why.
No, Ron Shelton, different.
And then their next game, I think I put this one in here because it's their first Sega game, I guess, because it's on the 32X. It was a Super Nintendo port of Star Trek, Starfleet Academy, Starship Bridge Simulator. What a title, right? Pretty short. Yeah. It was kind of panned, though, because people said that it was literally like the Super Nintendo game on the 32X cart. Have you played this one?
No, it's been on my list of games to get for the 32X, though I don't know what the price of it is now. I'm sure it's ridiculous, just like Star Wars chess is suddenly $100. But I'm trying to remember. There was another Star Trek game that Sega did back on the, I think, 2600 or something, or in arcades, that actually got a lot of awards and appeared in the Art of Video Games book and stuff. So, I mean, maybe they were hoping lightning would strike twice with that one, and it just didn't. But it's interesting. I mean, because 32X had a Star Wars game and a Star Trek game, which
I think this is not published by Sega. I think this is like a different company. So this is probably like the only thing that they have Sega related here is that it was on 32X.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Their next game is actually one of their most well-known games outside of the Conduit. It's their 1999 Lego Racers. This came out on Windows, Nintendo 64, and PS1. Even though it's more of their one of the most popular games, it was critically panned, receiving 66% in game rankings on the N64 and a modest 75% on PC. I think the biggest gimmick for this game, I remember, was that you could build your own cart out of like Lego blocks. So the idea was that it was customizable. Outside of that, I mean, did you ever hear anyone in your school talking about Lego Racers on the Nintendo 64?
No. I mean, I was like, I guess in high school at this point. So yeah, you would have gotten like made fun of if you talked about Lego Racers.
Lego Racers. Yeah. I would assume. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there that remember this. There was actually 3 more Lego racing games that came out after this based on the ideas that they founded on here. And I think that's why this one's more popular than, for the company, right? You'll start noticing that there's a lot of shovelware they were working on. And I'm only picking their big games here. So I picked games for an actual reason. They made like 100 games. It's ridiculous. So the next big game they got was... after this, they kind of did a lot of ports of sports titles, it seemed like, until they made another original game. And by original, I mean it's based on a license too, but it's originally their own idea behind it. And it was a hack and slash for Hunter the Reckoning, which is based on a tabletop game. And this title got a Metacritic of 70% on GameCube and 79% on Xbox. Do you remember the Hunter the Reckoning? Because I remember seeing this cover a lot in a lot of places. I just never played it.
I'm trying to remember. It looks familiar. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those games kind of run together in my head. It almost looks like a parody of what Xbox games were at the time.
Yeah, right. Like a grimdark Hunter on the cover with a
reminds me of
a cross.
Gungrave and Devil May Cry and Shadow Man.
I will say that when I saw this, I kind of wanted to pick it up because in this era, I was like really into like Champions of Norrath and those kind of hack and slash, like sit down couch multiplayers. So I'm like, I've never played this one. Maybe I should try to go pick it up. I haven't looked it up. I might be afraid of the price because random games get randomly inflated, right?
Well, if Star Trek, I checked, Star Trek 32X is selling for $60 as a cartridge and over 150 complete.
For the cardboard?
Which is bullshit. That thing used to be nothing. So I'm afraid Hunter the Reckoning, these are always fun to do, is selling for
nothing.
Oh, you're good. $20.
Woo! All right, maybe I'll pick it up. And the Xbox Series S has been getting cheap, so maybe I'll, I don't
there's
know
a sequel too. Yeah, so you can get both games.
They did
for
sequels,
like $30. Combined.
Yeah, it's not bad. They're probably not the greatest, but I'll put it in my collection. And so let's talk about more of their licensed game. After Hunter the Reckoning, I picked 3 licensed games they created. And if you have any opinions in these games, you can go ahead and say them. The first one is The Family Guy, the video game. You probably remember this one. They made that one
Hey,
for
Lois.
2K. Hey, Lois. Oh, Peter.
Peter.
Peter, you remember the time you win? Yeah.
This reminds me
Anyway,
of that time that we
it's the whole game.
Green
It's-
Hill Zone and fighting Dr. Eggman.
Yeah, literally it's the whole game, right? It's just like, hey, Peter, remember that time? And then the level starts up.
Right.
But yeah, they did a Family Guy. And you know what? I actually kind of always been into these, like, The Simpsons, the South Park game is probably the best, to be honest. Like a best representation of what the show is as a video game. The Simpsons had some really good ones too, Hit and Run, obviously, and stuff like that.
Yeah. And there was the Simpsons game was very good. Hit and Run was very good, and then I'm trying to think. There was a South Park racing game on the Dreamcast and N64 that I thought was all right, but
Yeah.
Chef's Love Shack, which a lot of people kind of shit on, that one actually is like super true to the game because it's like, or the show, because it's actual show animation. It's just like a quiz game. But
Yeah.
I always thought that one was all right. And then the Futurama game, you want to talk about rare Xbox games? That thing sells for like $200 plus now.
And I didn't even know there was a Futurama Xbox game. So
Oh,
now,
I have it. I bought it used for like $20 before the big boom.
Good pickup. Good pickup.
It's good. It's good.
Have you ever played the Family Guy game though?
I want to now.
Now I
want to
kind
have
of
all of
want
them.
to. Yeah, now I kind of want to just like, we should just collect like American cartoon video games. Like, oh, what do you got? I got the Itchy and Scratchy weird Genesis game. That's the only thing I play now.
Oh, it's
the
super
Krusty
cheap.
I believe it probably wasn't the greatest. I don't know what the Metacritic is, but I'm sure it's probably low. It's too hot for TV though. And
Oh, there's a sequel, Back to the Multiverse. They had a Xbox 360 game.
I don't know if that was made by them, but
No, it
yeah.
wasn't.
They also did Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, which is literally them just making you have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's literally them just making fun of that Phoenix Wright video game, which I actually really like.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job with this one. I remember liking it back then. I don't own it, but I remember playing it and thinking it was pretty funny.
Street Fighter characters cameo in it too.
Yeah. I bet it's probably rare because it's a Capcom game. I feel like Capcom is one of those like publishers that like their games just shoot up, you know.
I don't know.
And I like this show. It's a really good show. It's a really good era of TV. I wish they would make more.
It's $20. It's not an expensive game. Yeah, but no, it's a great show. And actually, there was like last year there was Bird Girl had a show. But I don't think it's from the same creators, and it's not good. Like, I watched it, and it was weird, because I'm like, the animation seemed the same. It had some of the returning characters. There were no, like, classic cartoon character cameos. There was so much, like, dialogue. Like, I was like, God, they're still talking. Like, can we... Anyway, I mean, this isn't a Harvey Birdman show, but yeah, it's a shame. But this is... If you like Phoenix Wright and if you like Adult Swim shows, like this is probably the best like Adult Swim show video game out there. And I know there's like a Aqua Teen golf game.
Oh, they did have one? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Aqua Teen Hunger Force is like a 3D golf game.
They also did a game we talked about not that long ago. You remember us talking about Astro Boy? Well, they did Astro Boy, the video game, after the good Sega games came out. They did the crappy movie tie-in one. I mean, it's not as nice. I mean, we talked about the Treasure one, which is really, really good. they followed it after, you know. They're like, here you go. It's like, it's funny because when I did the notes for this, I accidentally put the PS2 Sonic Team one because I feel like the most popular Astro Boy games are the Sega ones that they publish. So it's funny that we're looking at this one. And obviously we said last time we didn't play it, and I don't think I want to play it, but I just added on here because it was a tie-in to that our Astro Boy episode. So what is your opinion with their software? I mean, it really shows you what they were before Sega took over. At this point, we went from 1995 all the way to 2009.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always kind of had a soft spot for developers like this who mainly focus on licensed games. I honestly, if I were to get into video game development and publishing and stuff, I would focus on this because it's a much easier job to take on a license and make a game with a built-in fan base than to be like, we're the new guys on the block and we want to create a brand new IP that's going to be big. You know, and you're kind of out there on your own. It's very difficult to actually establish that. So, I don't know. I think it's admirable what they did. I think some of their games are very good. I think some of them are not. But in the end, it seems like they were successful. So
they were releasing like literally 1 year 5 titles. I think that year they released the Conduit, they did this Astro Boy game. They did like 3 other ones and the Conduit at that year. So they were kind of like that Alex Kidd friend, people where they were just like pumping them out
like
quickly.
A sweatshop.
Yeah, a sweatshop, yes. And in between, they did some self-publishing before Sega. They published some WiiWare games when WiiWare was popping. They did BIP Casino, Blackjack, Gyro Star, and High Voltage Hot Rod Show, which is like a racing game. So it's safe to say, they did a lot of titles. I said they did 5 one time in 1 year, so a lot. What is your opinion on the short-lived WiiWare exclusives that a lot of smaller publishers got in early and abandoned later on on the Wii? One of the past episodes, we did talk about Prope and their WiiWare titles on Sega Talk number 76, so we do talk a little bit more about them over there. But what is your thoughts on all this? Like,
yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a fad. It was, it's unfortunate though, because so much of this stuff's lost to history. Like, it's just like very early App Store games where they just don't work anymore. Like even the Jet Set Radio HD port, which does not feel that long ago, no longer functions on my phone. And I'm like, really? Gave you guys $5 for this? It doesn't work anymore? I mean, at the very least with the Wii, you can return to it and play these games. But it's unfortunate. I think that a lot of this stuff just kind of like is inaccessible now.
Yeah, and I think the weird part was that like everyone was like, "Oh, this is gonna be the next Xbox Live Arcade," and like it just like no one made games after the first 2 years. They were like, "Oh, I guess people aren't buying digital games on Wii," and then they just like started doing some other stuff. Like instead, they would be making like those cheap like M&M weird license game mini game collections, so they could put them right there at the store right when you check out.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. They were like, oh, we could just package it and sell way more at the store. And I think that's what a lot of people started doing. But yeah, it was weird. But yeah. According to a Q&A with High Voltage's COO,
cool.
Conduit started development as early as October 2007. High Voltage at this time was not just working on a first-person shooter, but was also working on their own engine called the Quantum 3 engine. Scott Williamson talked a bit more about this engine to IGN back in 2009 to promote the Conduit and the engine's, which is the engine's debut game. He said, Quantum 3 is on the Wii, PS2, PSP, and PC. It is also used to support the Xbox, but at that time it was already going out of the way, I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of the stuff they talked about in their interview, it sounded like a snake oil salesman trying to like sell you something that like you don't need and calling it unique. So it's like, not to sound too repetitive, but the greatest strength is that it's abstract and data driven, which allows us to efficiently create content that can be shared across platforms. While this alone isn't necessarily unique, its implementation is. It's highly efficient on each platform, but orthogonal from the point of view of game programmers, artists, and designers. The shared content isn't limited to textures and models either. It includes everything: maps, regions, navigation data, collision data, UI, movies, audio, and even game logic. It really enables High Voltage software to quickly make high-quality games of any type on multiple platforms. It's also extendable. We can add new features and even platforms to the engine, which, isn't that the game engine that it's supposed to be, like everything they kind of explained is just like the typical game engine. It's like, yeah, you could program and put art in it. Yeah. All right. I think it's also during the era, when they were trying to sell it, back then, we didn't have a lot of engines like we do today. Like now we have the RGG Dragon engine and Capcom's Resident Evil engine. Back in the mid-2000s, it was sort of open season, especially since like Epic Games literally just launched their Unreal 3 in 2007. So this was a couple years after that.
Right.
So it's funny to see interviews and articles. IGN had a series of articles based on their engine during the time. While I personally think Sega's interest in working with High Voltage was because of their engine and probably the price of making games, do you think gamers care too much about engines, like when they buy a game?
I mean, in our own little Segabits Discord, I know there are people who are big fans of like the Hedgehog engine. And then of course the RGG Dragon engine. So I think once you become aware and accustomed to the types of games, then when you're like, oh, it's running on this engine, well, I like that game, so it should run similarly. But still, like, the concept of an engine for a majority of gamers, even myself at times, is kind of like, it's like when they talked about the emotion engine on PS2. I was like, what does that mean? Like they cry? Like, what is that?
Wasn't that like a chipset or something? I don't know, man.
Right,
so
but
weird.
in this case, I think he's more selling to the likes of Sega when he's talking about this, because obviously it would be great to be able to release cross-platform games, and they did. But so did a lot of other developers, because I really feel like Wii, PS2, and PSP were always bundled together. If a game released on one of those, they released on all of them. You'd have it for Harvey Birdman. You'd have it for, unrelated to them, Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. But it's like, don't you want a big Indiana Jones games on Xbox and like PS3? And it's like, well, no, because we developed it for this engine that really only plays well with Wii, PSP, and PS2. So it's like in that era, there really were like games that either appeared on PS3 and 360 or Wii, PS2, and PSP. And I feel like by and large, High Voltage were more the Wii, PS2, PSP developer for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree
like
with
with
you're
Sonic
saying.
Unleashed, like in that case, that was a game that had two versions, one for Wii and PS2, and then one for 360 and PS3. So
It was a weird era where like everyone wanted to make money on every platform, but then like you had to put so much money into the ports that like you literally remade the game.
right, and sometimes like either you would remake it 1-to-1 or make a completely different game. So I've actually recently been going back and buying games that I thought were straight ports, and I'm like, oh, it's a completely different experience. Like the Ghostbusters video game actually released to the Wii and I think PS2, but it's the same story but cartoony character graphics and different style of gameplay. And I'm like, oh, that's really weird.
And
Like, I don't know.
I will
It's a
say
strange time.
I will say that it's a little sad that this engine actually never got like this game never got ported to anywhere, like on the PSP, whatever they listed here.
Exactly, yeah.
PS2, PSP, and PC or whatever. Like that was my thing with it. It's like, oh, so you guys made all these tools to cross do all this stuff, and then you guys were like, oh yeah, we're not gonna port this game anywhere. This is a Wii game. It's like, oh, all right, why show off that? I don't know. Well, they talked jibber jabber to impress us. The engine did allow mapping, bump mapping, reflection, refractions, gloss, and detail mapping, with the goal of making Conduit a competitive visual experience to the PS3 and Xbox 360. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. The Wii is so weak. Like, it's literally running at 480p while other games are running at like 720p and up. That's
right.
A big difference in the way that the image quality is. So we're going to look at a couple of images. Some of these games are games that all these games are first-person shooters that came out the same year as the Conduit. And I kind of feel bad for the Conduit because I'm going to be honest with you. 2009 was a big year for first-person shooters. And I will say that the Conduit is probably the best first-person shooter on the Wii. Here we have a couple alien and some environments of the Conduit. As you can tell, like there's like this shiny kind of weird mapping on the characters that makes them kind of look more like a PS3 game than a Wii game where they were more flat textures. So there is a lot of work here. Like the lighting has real shine, but the environment is flat like you would expect in a like Xbox game, I would say, like first-person shooter. So it's like a mix. They tried the best, but I think, it is what it is. And here, next, we have Modern Warfare 2, which is considered one of the most one of the best graphical games on the Xbox 360 came out that year, which crazy. Look at the difference. Obviously, it's kind of hard to compete when you have an Xbox 360 power behind you. And then the next one after that is Halo 3 ODST. As you could tell, environments look amazing. And then the last one is Killzone 2 on the PS3, which is so weird because it looks like somebody ran it on a Instagram filter and they're like super dark and gloomy. You know what I mean? It's like it almost feels like you're wearing a helmet while you're playing, which in the game you are supposedly. So I guess maybe that's what they thought about. I don't know. It looks like, or the filter they put when someone's in Mexico on a TV show, like they just put that weird filter. This is it. So I mean, do you think competitively it competes with the PS3? I mean, the PS3 and Xbox. I mean, the 360. Because I think it's hard to compete against something that's like 20 times more powerful than your thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely is not competing with them. But at the very least, they're offering a similar experience on the Wii. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd have to imagine anyone playing a first-person shooter on the Wii owns another console.
Back then, for sure.
I don't think it was so much like, let's draw people over to this console and so they don't buy a PS3. And it's more like, you know, like your little brother has the Wii and you have your PS3, and then you're like, oh, this Conduit game looks cool. Can I borrow your Wii, little bro? You know, and introduce it to you. You know, I mean,
yeah.
And
I think at this time there was that big movement, remember, where everyone's like 360 and Wii, or PS3 and Wii. Like everyone wanted a Wii, but they also wanted an HD console. So it was like the Wii sold like 80 million units just because everyone bought it as a supplemental console. There you go.
That's what I did. Yeah, I was 360 and Wii. Yeah.
Same. I mean, there was a lot of Nintendo games that were really fun to play with family, and it was like a totally different experience on the Wii than you would be able to get on 360 and PS3. So I think they did that right back then. Let's talk about, so outside of this, a lot of high voltage interviews obviously focused on the idea that the Wii had low quality software, especially amongst games aimed at adults. There was a very big discussion at the time period about the Wii being casual friendly. At the time, Sega used this avenue to have a full line of M-rated games to keep their brand in the forefront of Wii. They make cool Wii games with games like The Conduit, House of the Dead Overkill, and Mad World. We did a Mad World episode actually. So, but while the Conduit talked about it, the game was actually rated T for teen. For the longest time, I thought it was rated M. I don't know why. And so it's not a mature game compared to other ones. But what is your overall idea of games having violence and Sega cutting that lane to try to get in front of the crowd? And are there any non-Sega mature games you enjoyed on the Wii? Or non-Sega mature games, sorry.
I mean, I think it's smart of Sega because when people talk about mature Wii games, I think they always bring up Sega's titles. I don't think they bring up the Conduit. It's usually Overkill and Mad World, but it is part of that kind of more teen, adult-focused family of games. As far as non-Sega mature games on the Wii, I don't really think I can think of any. None come to mind.
I have a few that I actually like. I think the Death Space Extraction game is pretty good. I'm trying to think of. There was a Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles game that was like a light gun shooter that I really liked. Sega was the king of light gun shooters on the Wii, like period. But that one's a good supplemental game to have because it's originally made for the Wii from the ground up compared to a port. So was House of the Dead Overkill, but outside of that, Sin and Punishment 2 is really good by Treasure. Very underrated. Sold like one copy probably. So those are pretty good games. There was a lot of mature games, but I feel like you were right. Like most gamers remember the mature titles from Sega, like Mad World, obviously because of the art style. Overkill because they cursed every single second. So yeah, I definitely do agree with that. High voltage at this point really wanted to make the next Halo, and I think this was like on the Wii. I put the Switch on here, but no, the Wii. And they thought they had a lane to make a high-quality original sci-fi shooter with the Wii motion controller, but most lists I saw online on like the best first-person shooters, a lot of them actually did not have the Conduit in it. A lot of the top 3 FPS games are usually considered for people: Red Steel 2, the GoldenEye remake, and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I forgot that Metroid Prime 3 came out on Wii. It's been that long, and they're still working on 4, but all right. What is your thoughts on the state of Wii FPS games? And did you play a lot of FPS games on the Wii, like when they were coming out? Did you even care? Was that something you cared about at the time?
I've never really been big into FPS games. I played GoldenEye a little bit, like at friends' houses, but I never really gravitated to them. I don't know if it's because of the culture behind them. Like when I see people playing them, it just doesn't seem like my thing. I don't really know what to say about them. Like recently I was watching like some kids play Fortnite, and it just seems so like mind-numbing to me. It's like, you got to build something, use Spider-Man, jump, fly, okay, shoot him, kill him.
Wait,
and
you had me at use Spider-Man.
I just like, what? And I don't know. And it's not even an age thing. Like I've just never really been that into first-person shooter games, and I think it's because as we look at some of these screenshots, it's just straight up like realistic, gritty war shit, and like honestly, I think it kind of glorifies that, and I think it's kind of gross that so many people get so excited for the next Call of Duty, and I don't know if it's like a bro culture behind it, but I just think it's super gross. It's one of the things I hate about video games, actually. So, but I will say, now that I talk about all that, Halo is the one video game, first-person shooter, I like actually really enjoyed and probably played the most, and by the most I mean more than 6 hours, which is a lot for me. And I actually really enjoyed multiplayer Halo. So I think once it shifts into sci-fi and there's a level of disconnect from reality there, I like it. But when it's like, oh, I was playing the latest Call of Duty and you go to Kosovo and you're shooting, I'm like, especially with the shit going on now, like, really? I don't know. That's me.
I haven't been into them either. Like you said, when everyone had GoldenEye, right, on the Nintendo 64, and all my friends would always be like, hook up 4 controllers, let's all play, and like spend the night. And I'm like, I want to play a different game. I want to play a racing game, something. And it was always back to GoldenEye with everyone. And I was like, I don't want to spend the night at your house for 12 hours to play a game I absolutely do not like. It's not a bad game. I did have fun sometimes, but like just first-person shooters, it's like, oh, you shot me. All right, I'll come back. It's like I just personally never got too much into them. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just not my type of games. I will say that sometimes I do enjoy some of the single-player stuff. Like you said, Halo, I really enjoyed that with co-op when you played it on Legendary and you guys were trying to figure it out. Like, I actually like the co-op versus the computer, where the computers are really hard, and then you guys were trying to figure out things, you know, like, I'm going to get behind the car and you go over there and distract them, or something like that. That's fun. That right. I consider fun, yeah. So there is aspects of the first-person shooters.
Wolfenstein, the original Wolfenstein 3D, I really like. Dark Forces, Doom. So, you know, I like those when it's a little, like, disconnected from reality. Those are fun, but you don't want to be fighting as Ukrainian soldiers in the border Kyiv or anything. and it kind of sickens me that in 10, 15 years, there will be scenarios in wars going on right now. And people are like, oh, yeah, do that campaign. I'm like, people actually died. You know? Like...
Yeah, I'm good. So one of the big selling points from Sega and High Voltage was that the game would have a full-length single-player campaign, which it did. It had 9 missions, clocking in at 6 hours of gameplay, which isn't bad length at all, even though it sounds like a bad length. Especially considering with the competition that year, which was Modern Warfare 2 had a story of 4 hours, Halo 3 ODST about 6, And Killzone 2 had the longest one at 7.5 hours. I actually beat Killzone 2 and I haven't beat ODST, but I did beat Modern Warfare 2, and I was like, I always thought like that's it. That this is what everyone's like. Like that game was like hyped like it was the next coming of Christ. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, that was it? Okay. It's just a bunch of like weird Jack Bauer scenes put together where they're like, nuke, nuke. And it's like, all right, dude. It was all right. It was all right. So what is your opinion on the lengths of single player campaigns? I mean, like, should they have to be 20 hours long with upgradable weapons? And like, to me, they're just like shooting galleries. Like that's why I get bored of these kind of games sometimes. They just feel like the guys stand in front of you, you shoot them, you get another weapon, you shoot them with another weapon.
Right. I think with these games, their bread and butter are the multiplayer. So to do the story mode, I think it always should be short-ish. I think 6 kind of seems like a sweet spot. Like with Halo, obviously everyone's going to play through the story mode because they're really into the story for Halo, but you have to imagine it's like watching a movie or a miniseries. And so in that length makes total sense. I would never play. I mean, like I just said, I'm not big into first-person shooters, but I would never play a 20-hour one. Like, that would get so boring. I don't think there would exist a 20-hour first-person shooter that is good. You know?
I will say that the new Doom game, actually, they kind of, well, you know what? They do something funny in the game because they actually have actual bosses with moves. So they took stuff from, like, I would say Dark Souls or something. And then they actually have exploration where you could, like, it's an part platformers, so you're like trying to figure out secrets, like things like that. When they're really well designed, it could work, but like very few games do that. Like I would say that the new Doom games are actually a like oddity in the first person genre like that. There's very few, but like I agree, a lot of them are like you said, yeah, it's not something you play for the story. Like I have a lot of friends that play every single Call of Duty game. None of them could tell me the story of any of the games. They never play it. They just go straight into the multiplayer. They don't care. It's like, it's whatever, right? So let's read the setup to the story. I'll put some chillin'. I'll put some music in the back while you read the setup for the story. It is kind of long, and I apologize, but you know what? It's not my fault. It's the developer's fault. So, Barry...
You apologize to me? All right, here we go. The Conduit takes place in 2012 in Washington, D.C. On March 19th, the city has an unusual weather system over the east coast of the U.S. Many rivers increase their water levels. On April 19th, a flu-like illness known as the bug, or the bug, because of this, yeah, well, we all get the bug. Because of this illness, many members of government and staff stay at home. Hey, good for them. In hopes of not being infected. On June 21st, it's reported the number of missing citizens has reached a record total of 1842. So many specifics.
Right?
On June 26th, Dr. Allers Drinley, a renowned doctor of virology, isn't this Fauci? Was tasked to create a treatment for the bug. On June 29th, a UFO was spotted hovering over Washington, D.C. On July 19th, it was made public that Dr. Fauci disappeared the previous day. On July 27th, Mayor Arnold Ferguson made a statement about urging citizens to drink bottled water as the bug was thought to be in the water supply. On August 1st, a citizen by the name of Michelle Arlen claimed to have been abducted by aliens the previous week. While walking by the Jefferson Memorial on August 9th, there was an attack on the Washington Monument by detonated explosives, and ID cards used in the attack were stolen from the Pentagon, while some Pentagon officials were recovering from the bug. On August 30th, it was announced that the threat level remained red for the third week since the attack on the Washington Monument, and on September 11th, oh boy, presidential candidate Senator Harriet Reamer was assassinated by terrorists posing as her own Secret Service detail. On October 1st, a Secret Service member named Michael Ford was recruited to the Trust as he saved President Charles Thompson from an assassination attempt, and he was the only Secret Service agent who didn't turn against the president. The citizens of D.C. are evacuated by Homeland Security. the Trust Commander John Adams, with permission of the President, sent forward on a crucial mission to track down a supposed terrorist and retrieve a stolen Trust prototype. Jesus Christ.
Right? What do you? It's like I don't even know what to say. It's like, check all these things. It reminds me of, like, I just read the Stand not that long ago, and it's like Stephen King will have chapters where he's all, on this day this happened, and this day this, and it's like, wait, did you guys just read the Stand? And they were like, we'll make it with bugs. So they reminded me a lot of that, like the dates and the exposition. It's funny that the president of the United States here, they say that he beat Barack Obama and who's the other guy running? McCain, and he became the president. Michael, I think it's Erlin or something like that. And I was like, oh, so they actually do use some real world ideas. So I'm assuming a lot of these, like, oh, is this Fauci? Well, Fauci's like, it's hard to believe, but the dude is like 100 years old, and like the dude, and he looks like he's in his like 60s. So yeah, he's been around for a long time.
It's weird.
The bad guys on here are like the bugs, I guess, or insects or whatever they are. I don't know. While artistically the Conduit does stand out from other shooters story-wise, it is pretty much the basic unknown invader comes to Earth, like the Covenant on the Halo or the Hellgast in Killzone 2. What is your thoughts about the setup story for the Conduit? Does this make you want to play the first single player more? No. Okay. It's a lot of like weird, like they want to be like, they also have a lot of conspiracy theories and the idea, like funneling the idea that the government is like secret, shady organizations and all this other stuff. And you know what? To be honest with you, it's crazy that all that stuff is like popping right now. Everybody, you know, there's like a whole spectrum of people talking about conspiracy theories and like spending hundreds of hours discussing stuff that's made up in their head, basically. So it's, I think the Conduit could, I don't know. It's more it's a little relevant, I would say now. I think they knew these weird people in the foreground. I think a lot of people did, like Alex Jones, you know, and all that. So yeah, and well, right here, one thing that the Conduit always showed in promotional material was the all-seeing eye. Another thing of conspiracy theorists is the Illuminati, right? Or the ASE, which our Patreon said he didn't like. But it was like literally on the cover of the game, so it's a big thing, right? For short, it's a highly advanced device designed to universally cipher. It emits a beam of light and can be used for different things like doing puzzles, decoding hidden messages in the alien language, and they actually have a alien alphabet for this game that actually translates to English. And I'm like, all you need is that little like transcoder strip, and you could transcode anything in the game. You don't need this all-seeing eye. You just need a brain. The device is really, it basically to me was like a copy of Metroid Prime, the scan visor, where in 2002, where they, but in this one they also used it for multiplayer. Which let's talk about multiplayer because it's a big deal. So here's the tragic part of this episode. You can't play the multiplayer game anymore because it basically, if you try to boot into it, you have to connect to Nintendo's Wi-Fi connection, which got closed on May 20th, 2014. The title doesn't feature split screen mode for multiplayer. And according to High Voltage Software, they wanted to add a offline LAN ability for multiplayer, but Nintendo persuaded them not to do it. I'm assuming so more people could get on their online service. That was what they said to Nintendo Power during an interview. At first, the game promised 16 player matches, but later was reduced to 12. The game was one of the few games to support Nintendo's Wii Speak peripheral, which was only one of the 13 games that did it. Like, 13 games supported this thing. And have you seen this thing before, dude?
Never. No.
Yeah, this thing is ugly, dude. Like, it's supposed to be Nintendo's voice chat feature. They released it back in 2008. It's a USB device that you connect to your Wii, and then you put the speaker or the mic on top of your Wii bar or whatever it's called. And according to Miyamoto, it's supposed to clearly capture many different voices being spoken in the room at the same time and convey them over the internet. It's like
It's a microphone, right?
yeah, it's just a microphone that connects, and they made it like they just literally made their own custom microphone, right? Like they couldn't just do a headset, right? That just gets your voice that Xbox had. They had to make their own custom like microphone that you connect through the back, and it has like this big old block, and then it has the mic, right? My thing is like, and it's supposed to capture everyone in the room's voice, and it's like when I play games, I don't want to hear the people in the background. I want to hear the guy playing with me, right? So
Right.
I think it's a stupid idea, but what is your opinion on this idea of like the whole room being able to talk to people on the internet instead of just the one microphone that we have personally, you know?
It reminds me of the Kinect, which did that. And I think, didn't the Wii or the PS3 have something like that too? But yeah, it is a strange concept where it's like, okay, cool, Miyamoto, like my mom can walk by and talk to my friends while I'm playing the Conduit.
Yeah, like she's like, Barry, why don't you pick up after yourself? Mom, I'm playing the Conduit with my friends.
Exactly.
Please. Yeah, like, and it's like, Donkey just did a video where he's playing Fortnite, and there's like little kids. Basically, it's the whole joke of the video is that only little kids play Fortnite, and they're like screaming in the background and stuff. It's like nobody wants to hear kids. It's like, especially since this is a kid console. Kids are the most annoying thing ever. We don't want to hear them in the background, period. So, yeah, stop. So, since we can't play multiplayer, and there's literally only 2 videos on the internet showing multiplayer, I'll play one of them in the background while we talk about the multiplayer. And to be honest with you, it seems very basic, very like nothing new or original behind the idea of multiplayer. So... multiplayer for the Conduit was it had like a free-for-all mode. It had a team matches mode which they called Team Reaper, and team objectives, which had kind of like capture the flag but with an ASE, for example. Free-for-all, which is basically you go in there and you don't have no team, it's just you versus the whole game. They had 6 different modes, which was quick match, which we know what it is, you know. Marathon, which the player with the most kills at the end of each match wins. 3 strikes, players only have 3 lives. Last man standing, players only have 8 lives and have 8 minutes to win. The last man standing in the end wins, or the time runs out with the most lives. Asc Football, which adds player who holds the ASC the longest wins, which is the All CNI. Bounty Hunter. Each player has a target and they must kill for points. You lose points if the player kills the players that are in your targets. The player with the most points wins. And Team Deathmatch literally only had 3 modes. Quick match, Marathon, which is the same thing. The player with the team with the most kills wins. Shared stock match. Each team shares lives in one pool. The team that depletes the enemy's team's life pool wins. And then team objective had 4. Quick match, what we talked about. Marathon, the team that captures the most in the end of each round wins. Killing override, the first team to reach the capture limit or kill limit wins. And then single ASE, all CNI. There's only one ASC. The first team to reach it and capture it in the time limit wins. So pretty basic, I would say, modes. Like, I think you'd find these on every kind of like FPS. At this point, it wasn't anything new. The game also had ranks, like, you know, competitive play. Lots of weapon sets. That's actually the most impressive part, I think, of the game, was the weapon sets. And it also had like 7 multiplayer maps, which is a far cry from other FPS games at this time. Modern Warfare 2 had 26 multiplayer maps. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer maps are still considered some of the best design maps of all time. People I know that play the games always talk about some of the levels. They're always like, hey, remember Scrap Metal Zone? No, not that. But you know what I'm talking about. You know, like they'll just be like, hey, you remember the Fortress? It's like, no, I don't play that game, but thanks for letting me know. Killzone, though, they had about 7 maps, and later on they got free DLC maps. This game did not get that, sadly. Like, the support just wasn't there for it, I think, in that aspect. I think that's something that Sega really did miss at the time, would be, like, supplemental downloads, you know? Like, keep people engaged on the online aspect of it. I think Killzone, which wasn't even that popular on PS3 multiplayer-wise, did a good job releasing more maps later on as free. So I think they did that well. While we never got to play the Conduit online, do you think the online gameplay was a big selling feature for the Wii? And did you ever play any Wii games online? Because I don't think anybody did.
I was able to, but I never did because it was such a headache. I mean, even with the Switch, it's a headache to, like, add a friend. You have to, like, look up a number and all that. And it's just like, they don't make it easy.
It's like, how does Xbox, even PlayStation and Steam on PC have it all down, and you're like still in like 2018 going, friends codes. Oh, that's exactly what we need right now. It's terrible. Right. Yeah, I think Nintendo kind of like shot themselves in the foot here. They could have just made a real online thing. And let's be honest with you, I tried to play Smash Bros when they came out, Brawl, and it was horrible online. It was like really bad, you know, like it was always laggy, and I know my internet is pretty bad, but I feel like everyone complained about it at the time. But let's talk about music. I usually don't like talking about music, but this game actually has kind of an interesting like promotion. Like they even had a promotion about the music, which is weird. But the music for the Conduit was composed by Diego Stocco, a Italian artist who actually worked on TV and movies. Some of the movies are like very low budget movies. But for this game, Diego was created unique instruments for the soundtrack. Some of them included a megaphonic roso drum, an electronic timbre, coloration with controlled distortions. I don't know what that is. Distro drum, an overdrive acoustic drum coupled with a resonant toy piano, unorthodox cymbals, hanging cymbals, played with a wooden saw and a light controlled, I don't even know what that is, oscillator.
Okay.
Connected through a vintage reverberation amplifier and a metal contrabass, a bowed piano and bass strings mounted on a garage heater. And you know what? Like, this actually got me interested. I'm like, oh, I actually want to see how these instruments work. Like, let me look at some research. Sega literally did not do like a whole like, you know, documentary on this. Like, oh, what instruments did this guy create? And like, you know, do like a breakdown every week with each instrument. Instead, they did this like really weird short clip he posted on his YouTube channel, which is weird. And it's basically just like music in the background with the Sega. Well, you could play it, and then high voltage software in the beginning, and then it's like just a soundtrack in the background with him screwing around with the instruments a little bit. It's called Shaping the Soundtrack, and it's like you could have like see he's kind of showing off the instruments, how they work a little bit, but not in detail. It's like, what is this? It's like a microphone. Yeah, we get it. Distro. Look at this. What? This is the weirdest, dude. And then the orthodox symbols. Like, what is it? This is just like symbols. Like, isn't this on a drum set? See, this is like what LCO is. They don't really tell you how they work, you know?
Huh. That is a very weird video.
That's what I'm saying. That's basically it, really.
Reminds me of Saw.
Yeah, it was strange. Outside of that, let me see here. So, what is your opinion on artists that try to create their own instruments to stand out from the crowd? Do you know any band or artist that you listen to that had tried something similar, making their own instruments?
Yeah, no, I dig it when artists do that. I'm trying to think like top of my head, like maybe Damien Albarn with Gorillaz and Blur. Like he does a lot of. I saw him in concert a few times, and like he really uses that megaphone a lot, and it brings a really interesting feel to the lyrics because typically people want to have their voice sound super clear, and to him the megaphone almost brings like this level of distortion that I don't really know why he does it, but it works really well. Like it's when he brings out the little megaphone, you're like, oh, he's gonna sing this song, or something like that. um I'm also thinking of maybe he doesn't make his own instruments, but like Göransson, who did a lot of the music, Ludwig Göransson, who does like the Mandalorian stuff. Like he'll dig up instruments you'd never really think to hear on a TV show,
Very good
and
music.
utilize them, and it sounds great. So I'm all for it, and I think it's cool what this guy did. I just think, as is the case with Sega in this era, they just did a really terrible job promoting it. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
like-
if we'll get to it, but there was an unboxing. So
I did not put it on here, but you can send me the
You
link
didn't.
if you, and I could play it if you want to do a playback.
Well,
on
no,
that.
it's not a big deal. But when I was like considering buying this game for the episode, but just would have taken too long to receive it, I was like, oh, there's a special edition. So I looked on YouTube for an unboxing, and I found one, and I was like, this is really shitty. This is badly recorded. And then I looked who uploaded it, and it was Sega themselves. And I'm like,
Oh,
uh-oh.
yeah, not good. As for bands, for me, when I was younger, I went to like a concert, not specifically for that band, but they were there, so I was like, I'm gonna wait in line. I'm not waiting in line. It was like, I'll go to the sun because it's California in the summer. I'm white. Like my skin's really white, so if I go out in the sun for 5 seconds, I'm like pretty much toasted, right? And this band was supposed. I stayed out in the sun. I'm like, I'll stay out for this band because they made their own instrument. That was their gimmick. It was like this metal band called Motor Grader. They're like a Slipknot ripoff band, but they had their own instrument. Instead of banging on trash cans or whatever. And then I literally listened to it for 5 minutes, and I'm like, nope. And I turned around. And I'm like, no, this is not for me. Sorry. I was never into new metal at the time, so I was like, I gave you guys a chance. Just hear people telling me that you made your own instruments. I didn't. I don't like the sound of it. Just garbage. Didn't like it. There's another band called Author and Punisher that came out maybe like I've listened to them last like 3 years ago, maybe less. And they make their own like weird metal like I don't even know what to call it. It's like like just like levers. Like they make levers and then like it's digitized, so whenever the lever goes up, it makes like a different distorted noise, and it kind of has like that metal feel, right? Like dun, dun, when you move it. So
That's interesting.
That's interesting. I found that to be an interesting use of like a different type of instrument. That's pretty cool. So that guy's doing something. I mean, also when Diego was done composing the soundtrack, he would send the tracks to Rick Nielsen of punk band Cheap Trick fame to supply guitar riffs over the music. Rick is known to rock listeners for sporting, I'm not even kidding you, a guitar with 5 necks. Like, it's one guitar and it has 5 different guitars built into one guitar. It's ridiculous. It has like the humbuckles and everything. And it's like, do you think Sega should have made a more, like, literally a video of him just playing this ridiculous guitar with 5 necks as a video online so you could play different tracks of this soundtrack that he, like, did the music for? Because, like, they didn't... Okay, Cheap Trick's not the biggest rock band in the world or whatever. Like, they're kind of like I would say, like a middling band. Like, I would say the Ramones or Sex Pistols probably have more of a cult following than they do. But it is pretty impressive when you have somebody that's famous in the rock world and he has a 5-neck guitar and you're not using them to promote him in the soundtrack. Come on. What is this? It's crazy, though. What do you think about 5-neck guitar? You think would you play a 6? Nick?
10.
10.
A circle, like
It's just like a sun. It's like
yeah.
It's not
It looks
even
like a
playable,
sun.
so you have to like move it around. Sounds like
You come out of the middle of it,
it's
in a hole.
You sound like a Bayonetta boss. It's like it's 10 different forms. Every single one has a neck of a guitar. That would be sick. Advertisement, which actually kind of spanned longer than I thought it would be, because this game was actually pushed super hard. I was even going to do a section of games that came out in 2009, but I dropped it because we have enough to talk about already in the advertisement. So advertising for the Conduit was actually pretty massive, with the team at High Voltage Software getting massive exposure on lots of publications, like a series of articles on the engine from IGN, huge dedicated sections of magazines, including Nintendo Power. 2008/2009 was the early life of online marketing. We didn't talk about Mad World, another one. We did talk about Mad World, another one of these Wii mature titles that Sega had like a TV-style show at the time with announcers telling you, it's like a fake show telling you about the world of Mad World.
Right.
Which we thought was kind of interesting. The Conduit had its own site called scene-is-deceiving.com, which sadly is dead and unable to be reached because it was an Adobe Flash site. And you know how that works with archive.com. So, but the basic premise of the site was that the site would basically have like alien drudge alphabet messages on the site, and you would translate, if you translated it into the text correctly into English, you would get wallpapers, icons, gameplay video, audio, developer interviews, and conspiracy-style articles. While online marketing is very important for games, do you think content like this on a website was a better course of action for Sega? Like hiding it between somebody that already played the game? Like who would know how to translate this without owning the game? So how's that advertising?
Yeah, it was a thing at the time though. Cloverfield did it. I'm trying to think. The Strange Case of Beta. Remember that? The
Beta 7, like weird, like there was a leaker that people were getting hurt testing Sega games or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, this was a thing. It's just it didn't seem to take off with the Conduit, but it was I guess like a fun little Easter egg for people and nothing more. But
this is one thing I've noticed about this is like the advertisement is like almost aimed at people that bought the game, which is like the strangest type of marketing. But what do you think of these mid 2000s websites that try to be more interactive instead of like, here's what's new with the game, straight up style marketing we have now? Because like now Sega would just be like, here's the Yakuza trailer, all right, here's the Yakuza gameplay, you know?
Yeah, on one hand, I get that it makes more sense to just visit the site and have it say trailer, screenshots, buy now. But at the same time, I do miss that sort of like, you know, like let's say the new Sonic game coming out, instead of just being like trailer, screenshots, buy now, it's more like a little like 2.5D environment that you're exploring, and you're like clicking on things, and it becomes its own little game in and of itself. Like, I think that would be fun, and I kind of miss that sort of style where you're like, oh, there was this horror movie, and when you visit the website, it's actually an in-universe website for the police department, and you like click around and learn about the characters within the universe. You know, like they just don't do that anymore, and it's a shame. I mean, it's just like with I think DVD menus too at the time were really creative, and now it's just like
whatever,
a template, you know. Movies just start playing.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
I would agree with you on that. I do enjoy it in some aspect because there was some like creativity to it. I think there's still some people that are doing it. Like I remember not that long ago, the Batman, they released a poster with that one that has a Catwoman and him in the sunset. People were saying that if you put a black light to it, there's like a hidden messages on it. So there's like
that's cool.
So it's like it said, I think it says something like the Wayne family's responsible or something on it. But yeah, that's cool. It's like, and it's funny because I think like things that have a mysterious character, maybe like, I don't know, Sonic Forces, who had a mysterious character, would have been cool to have some sort of weird like follow the trails. Who really is Infinite or whatever his name was at the
Sonic Mania box set edition that had the digital copy of the game, had that card, that metal card, and it said "Fun is Infinite" on it. Remember that? Like hidden.
Yeah.
So that was I think that was Aaron Weber's doing though.
Yeah.
He did that stuff.
In September 18, 2008, High Voltage Software announced they had a contest for fans to submit user-created control schemes configurations for the Conduit. On January 15, 2009, lead designer for the Conduit, Rob Nicholas, announced three users. The three users that submitted their control schemes in a video on the Conduit. I could not find the video, or we would have played it, but. Sega did not give any prizes though for this. Like literally the only thing you got was your control schemes in the game, and you would get a shout out on the video that I cannot find anymore. So like cool contest. I'm surprised at how cheap Sega was with some of these contests. I'm like, oh, you guys didn't have like a replica of the all-seeing eye to give to these people or something for like
right,
for working on control schemes for you to make your game better. All right, cool. Cheap, but whatever. What are your thoughts on this type of contest? Like they're literally designing the game for you. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah,
right?
I never liked those contests where they're like, do our work for us. I still see it a lot now where it's like design cover a poster for our upcoming movie, and if you win, we'll share it on social media.
It's like,
It's
cool.
like, oh, cool. Why don't you pay me?
Exactly
to do your work. Or I saw one today. It was
give you
like,
some promo shit. You know what I mean?
It was like diamond studded Sonic things, and it's like, who do you want to show this off in a video and do an unboxing? Let us know. But it was more just like, we don't know what Sonic influencers are out there, so if you're out there, make a video pleading to share our product. And I saw some videos from some well-known Sonic YouTubers, and it's so cringy because they're like, look at all the things I own. Like, it's if I made one, I'm like, look what I own.
Give
Let
me more
me do
stuff.
it.
Give me more
And I'm
stuff.
like,
I know about stuff.
No, I have
Some dignity, a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Just a little bit. I was just say same thing. You know what? They could have gave out promo stuff for this. I think that would have been fine if you don't want to spend money. Obviously, I'm with you. I don't like when they do this. I know that Beyond Good and Evil 2 wanted people to do concept art for them, like for free, and it was like they made it like a big feature where like, oh, this game's going to be user created. And I'm like, literally, you mean free art from people on the internet that do all the work and you just credit them for exposure? Very, very not good, especially when the video game industry is making so much money, Sega had another contest. I put it was much better, but to be honest with you, I don't really think so. With AcidPlanet.com, which now got completely rebranded, and I think they sell like music instrumentals and stuff like software. They held a remix contest where they provided remixers with 66 individual instrumental tracks and allowed them to remix it and upload it on Acid Planet. Sadly, not really sure what the actual winners got in the contest, but IGN said that the winner will receive merchandise from Sony Creative Software, Sega, and High Voltage Software, with your song appearing as a bonus on the game's soundtrack. It's funny, though, because Sega put a lot of effort into marketing the soundtrack, I guess, with doing this contest and all this other stuff, having an actual rock legend on it. But they never really released. It was actually kind of short. If YouTube's soundtrack is to be, if it's correct, the track listing, it's actually a really short soundtrack, and it never got a physical version of the soundtrack. So it's like, oh, so you put my game on a bonus for something that doesn't exist?
Right.
Yeah, very strange. When you heard of the Conduit, how much? When you heard about the media and gamers talking about it, how much was it revolved around the soundtrack? Because I've never heard anyone talk about
nothing at all. Nope, nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Do you think remix contest with Sony was a good focus to sell the game?
Nope.
Oh, yeah,
it clearly didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And we have okay, this one's a weird one too. Like comic books? Yes, everyone says. Well,
yeah.
The Conduit actually got a comic book tie-in called The Conduit Orange Lights, written by Pat Dolan. I never heard of him. He basically, I don't know, man. It's hard to like say anything about this thing because like it literally takes. So the comic takes place 3 weeks after the events of the first game, which I mean, let's be honest, that's kind of weird. The art's fine, I guess, but it's aimed more at people that actually bought the game. The PDF's actually given away for free on Amazon, so anybody could read it. If you Google it, it's called The Conduit Orange Lights comic. You'll get the PDF right away, and anybody could look at it and gander on it after they beat the game. It takes place 3 weeks after, following a conspiracy radio host trying to delete footage of what happened in the game. But my thing is like, how is this going to sell a game? You know what I mean? Shouldn't it be a prequel instead of like to entice gamers to come in? But has there ever been like a piece of like promotional material, like a comic book or an actual novel that was like a prequel or a tie-in to a movie or a video game that was bigger that actually got you into the franchise?
I can't think of anything, but I definitely know of promotional comics that I would seek out after the fact.
Like
I remember
Shinobi?
the X-Men, the X-Men movies. There were a trilogy of prequel comics, Magneto, Sabretooth, and Rouge, I think. And they were really good. I remember actually the Magneto one has elements that appeared later in X-Men First Class. And the Sabretooth one actually showed that he knew who Wolverine was, and it actually kind of has elements from the X-Men Origins Wolverine. So that was kind of cool. But like, yeah, but all that's prequel material. Or in the case of the MonsterVerse stuff with Kong and Godzilla, they did like trade paperbacks every movie, but it would be like connecting the two movies, you know, like again, like a prequel. Here, though, it makes absolutely no sense to be like, I just flipped through the comic just now, and having not really played the game,
You're like, what is this?
I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And the artwork's not that, I mean, it's fine.
It's fine. It's free, you know. It's like what it is, you know. When you buy those like Shinobi tie-in comic books that Sega used to make too, like they're just what it is, you know, just cheap art, you know. It's not going to be like X-Men quality, but for me, when the first Star Wars movie came out, some guy was like, read Darth Maul Shadowhunter, the novel.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I was like, all right. And I read it and I was like, wow, Darth Maul is a badass man. And then like in the movie, he wasn't really in it, but the book was good. So that got me into Star Wars, the episode 1, and like got me, and I actually watched episode 2 day 1. So it did its job. I really liked the book though. And I would say a little disappointed that it didn't have that type of characterization, but then again, it's easier to do that in a novel than it is in like a movie. You know what I mean? Like they get to do more when what's in their head. It's hard to do that on film. So, well, the Conduit was hyped up massively to be Nintendo's FPS game of choice. I don't think today a lot of gamers. I think a lot of gamers today could probably name a few other FPS they liked more. Doesn't mean that at the time it didn't do well with some critics. For example, Game Informer gave the game a 7 out of 10. Nintendo Power gave it an 8 out of 10, and the highest review came from IGN at an 8.6 out of 10. But it never reached that 9 and up status that like Halo got at the time. IGN praised the game because according to them, it has the tightest, most comfortable control scheme of any console-based first-person shooter to date, and they found the plot to be engrossing. I also think the fact that it was one of the few Nintendo games with real online multiplayer also helped. February 2010, a little under a year after the release, the CEO of High Voltage confirmed with IGN that the Conduits had just sold just over 350,000 units. The company defended the numbers, suggesting all video game sales were down in 2009. Regardless of this, Sega still greenlit Conduit 2, which we might do an episode about in the future. But do you think 350,000 units is a little bit for a game that was like probably hyped the most game? Like, it was literally hyped more than any game I think Sega had at that time. Like, I don't think even like the House of the Dead Overkill. I actually know they got a pretty good promotion. I would say like Yakuza 3 and stuff, like it just went under the radar kind of promotion wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the budget of the game is. It must be like $2 if that they consider $350,000 a success with like all the hype the game got. I feel like the game's known more for the hype than it is actually known for being a game. But so let's talk about. Oh man, how do you? Let's talk about Conduit HD. I know people talked about them doing another or porting the game over, but it kind of did get a port. Well, since the release of Conduit 2 in 2010, the brand was basically dead until 13 years later, in March 14, 2013, when the Conduit HD was released for Android. Initially running on devices running NVIDIA's Tegra chipset, the port actually got a critically acclaimed. The port was not done by High Voltage Studio, but War Drum Studios, the guys that did GTA Vice City. The Conduit HD is pretty intact, but is also missing multiplayer, so you'll never play multiplayer basically anymore, because it's gone forever unless they do an HD port with it intact. For consoles, which I don't think so. But oddly enough, it seems that the Conduit HD came and went overall because it's not on the Play Store anymore. And I haven't seen any articles talking about it being removed. But I do have the page right here. You can see it. It's on archives. You can see that it existed, guys. Everybody, I'm not lying. It existed. I have it right here. And it has, at this point in this, 2013, it had 7,531 reviews at a 4 out of 5. I noticed that a lot of these is 3.8 out of 5, but I've noticed a lot of people complaining it's kind of hard when Android has so many phones, and especially early on in Android, you would buy a phone and then you would play a game and it's like, this one doesn't work on your phone, sorry.
Right.
And people get mad and they would downvote it. Like, I paid $20 for this game. It was $5 when it came out. You could play the first 2 levels for free. That's basically all I know about it. I never played this one. I didn't even know it existed. Do you know that there was a mobile port of this game?
I did not. And like I was saying earlier, like with Jet Set Radio HD and stuff, like Sega and other companies would do these games and they'd play for a few years and then they'd just quietly disappear from the store. Like, is Jack Lumber still up there? I don't know.
I don't know either. No,
is
probably
it still
not.
playable? I don't know. It's strange. Or the propeller head guy. Remember that one? Whatever that was.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're a lot less precious with mobile. I
will say this was published by High Voltage Software Inc., so it makes me think that maybe they own their assets and they own their game and their engine and stuff. And Sega was just publishing it on the Wii. I don't know what their deal is. Maybe they do own everything. Maybe Sega has some ownership on console ports. Who knows at this point? It hasn't been, revealed. But I do have another thing I want to talk about. The cover of the game. What's up with this cover, dude? Tell me about this cover. As a game designer, what does this invoke in your head? Like, it's the weirdest, most 90s cover in the world. Like, he's wearing these, glasses that someone, I don't know who would wear these glasses. Like, it's what a little kid thinks the future looks like. You know what I mean? Like, the glasses, the weird blue lights everywhere. It's the strangest cover I've ever seen.
It's a pretty cheesy cover. Yeah. I mean, you got the monument in the back there, so you're in DC, and I mean, I guess it conveys everything that the game contains. It has the enemies down there. He's got his little floaty thingy, the We Speak icon.
Oh yeah, we need that.
His gun. But then you go the other direction, and there's the special edition release that's just straight up, the all-seeing eye icon, and it's like a silver.
That one's pretty cool, I thought.
I thought that looks all right, and that one's almost just as cheap as the game itself. So I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, it's pretty weak cover art. It kind of reminds me of what's that one? The oh man, the book with Tom Hanks, the movie Tom Hanks running around.
Ready Player One? No, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Oh god damn it,
Dude, I don't watch Tom Hanks movies, man. Well, I watch Toy Story, obviously. Are you talking about Toy Story?
The Da Vinci Code. It reminds me of Da Vinci Code.
Gotcha. Yeah, Christian, or is it Christian? I don't know. It's like Christian conspiracy stuff or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or Catholic. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's what the special edition cover looks like to me.
The Conduit, the character on the front kind of reminds me of like Kid Chameleon if he was all grown up in the future because of the glasses and stuff. It's that level of cheesy. That's what it reminded me of when I first saw it. I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard to like market it this when it's like the dude is like, usually in these FPS games, they're wearing like this sick helmet that covers their whole face, like, you know, like Metroid or like Halo or like Killzone, and even like the people in the army of the stupid Call of Duty. Like some of them will have like a skull mask or whatever to make themselves look really cool. This one's like just give them some cool shades that are blue that it's color matching his gun. It's like, all right, dude.
Yeah, pretty weak.
But yeah, I think that's all I have for this episode. In the notes, you have anything to add about Dude Conduit?
No. But guess who does have something to add? Our Patreon supporters. If you support us on Patreon at any level, you can have your memories read by me, typically, at the end of the show. So we have two here. We have a newcomer. We have Dr. Scottnick, who I believe pops up on some of the live shows. So hello there. And he has to say a lot of people grew up playing Halo as their sci-fi FPS. For me, it was The Conduit, a game I hold so close to my heart. I found the alien design so incredibly cool, with the all-seeing eye being a super fun mechanic to mix it up with gameplay and some puzzle elements. And don't get me wrong, on the online, this along with Mario Kart Wii were my most played online titles on the system, and it was an absolute blast. I wish I could go back to when the Wii servers were online and play it all over again. Genuinely would be over the moon for a Conduit 3 on Switch. Wow, we found like the world's largest Conduit fan. That's amazing. Alex Hugh says, I remember buying this back in 2014. I don't remember exactly how far I got, but I do wish they could port or remaster it for PC or current consoles. Look at that, like Conduit fans represent. Here we go.
Just do a double pack, 1 and 2. I mean, at this point, High Voltage, I mean, I didn't talk about their faith or anything, but they got bought out by a company, whatever, from Ireland. I don't know.
Oh, good for them.
That's the end of this episode. You want to tease what we're going to do next episode?
Oh boy, next time we are going to stick to Nintendo consoles. In fact, we're going to be moving over to the Wii U and talking about Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, another game that has a online multiplayer mode that, in my opinion, is actually better than the base game itself. So join us, won't you?
Bye.
Boom.